Thank you. So I was in the Air Force for one enlistment, and I got out in 2012. And while I was in the military, I experienced a lot of you get to see in that program, you see a lot of traumatic events, people dying, people on both sides dying, and you end up with a lot of trauma stored in your mind and in your body through your nervous system response to the trauma. So I experienced a lot of that in the military and experienced seeing a lot of people dealing with that in different ways. And when I got out, I realized there was really no way for people who were in the drone program to get mental health support of any type. Because of our security clearance, we were unable to talk about anything that we saw. So basically what we were told was, well, you weren't boots on the ground, so you don't have PTSD. And two, you can't talk about it anyway because you're not allowed to. So I became incredibly frustrated with that. So that's kind of the experience with that. I started working in that area just because when I was in the military, the people on the other side became very human to me. After watching them for years, I started to realize these are human beings. And when I got to the point where I was like, I really don't support the war, I really don't support us going over there, I realized that there was a point where I wanted to start doing something to work towards an alternative, which got me into talking to the people at Vets for Peace, the people in IVAW, and several other veterans organizations that were Veterans Against the War, essentially. So I started working with some of them, and I did some work with several of those groups, including co-founding a really short-lived group that I'm not even sure exists anymore. But after a while, I started just working more on my own with that because as I got more towards the healing side of things, I realized that a lot of those organizations, and this is not a slam on them in any way, stay in that war mentality in terms of fighting what the machine that's sending us to war is. So I started to look towards different avenues of trying to help people in terms of ending war and encouraging peace through other avenues, such as natural healing, such as helping people to just shift a paradigm that's in the intelligence field of the entire civilization today, where people have a mentality that war's inevitable, and kind of learning more towards leaning into the realm of war's not inevitable. There is another there's more options. Yeah. Yeah, the decision with that was mostly just that I had seen some politicians that were really the drones are great. They're so tactical. They're so precise. They're so great. No one ever gets hurt with them in any way. We save all of our troops by not using by not using normal aircraft and by not putting boots on the ground. Everyone's safe. No one gets hurt. And it made me really think that they're telling people this, so people are considering that the drone program has no people involved, hence the word drone. Well, there are people involved because behind those drones, there's people operating them. There's people deciding who dies. There's people that are planning these missions. There's people that are seeing who dies. And there's people that are seeing these IED explosions that they respond to, the convoy overwatches that they do. There's people behind all of this. So it kind of encouraged me to finally just stand up and be like, hey, there's people behind this that are being affected massively by this. And I want to tell people that, well, I'm one of them, and I did experience a lot of craziness in this program, and that there has to be something done for the people that are behind this program, because we're not allowed to talk about it, but there has to be something done because there are people that are suffering immensely because they're part of this program, and not suffering in a physical sense. It's in no way comparable to being on the ground in combat or being shot at, but they are suffering in a strictly psychological sense, in terms of they do have PTSD from just fight or flight response, nervous system behavior because of doing strikes, because of seeing people being bombed, is still traumatic. And I wanted people to know that that's still very real, whether it's an unmanned aircraft doing the missions or not. The unmanned aircraft is kind of a farce because it's not unmanned. It's manned by people in a different location. That's the only difference. I started researching it in 2012. My twin sister told me that she thinks that I should start doing yoga. So I started doing yoga and started researching it, and she said, I think it'll help with just your stress from your job and everything and what you've had to go through. And I started researching the effects of PTSD on the body and how your body responds, because there's so many side effects that come from having PTSD that people haven't been paying attention to, such as like the side effects of the anxiety disorder, because that's essentially what PTSD is. It's an anxiety disorder. Your nervous system doesn't know how to respond to anything correctly anymore because it's been responding in a certain way for so long. It's programmed that way. So I started researching the effects of it and the side effects of like digestion issues, insomnia, just general like just defaults of everything that's like falling apart in people's lives that deal with PTSD. And I found that there's so many natural ways, including meditation, yoga, even so far as into marijuana, which is only accepted in 3 states, I think. And then in terms of psychedelic treatment. So I found so many different avenues that people have taken. And I started researching not just those topics, but finding veterans that have experienced incredible transformations through healing, through using these different avenues, none of which include drug therapy from the VA or cognitive therapy or prolonged exposure therapy, which is the 2 premier talk therapies that the VA likes to offer. These are all different avenues that people have taken solely out of just looking at themselves and being like, what would work for me? Like, what would work for my specific ailment that I have because of PTSD? Because so many different situations come about from each person's individual PTSD issues. So. For myself, well, I use yoga a lot. I practice transcendental meditation. I did some massage. I had some different massage techniques used on me, and I was actually part of a case study that a massage therapist friend of mine did, that she was studying the effects of relaxation massage on people with PTSD and actually studied my sleep patterns when I was able to sleep longer after I got massage, and my mood patterns, like how my mood was while I was in the program getting massage regularly. And I saw some really incredible results with that, as well as I used medicinal marijuana for quite some time to sleep at night, and it also helped improve my general mood, improve my ability to relax and to actually get into that meditative state without struggling so hard to just calm down. I have not, unfortunately. I'm currently in the process right now of talking to a guy named Richard Stroder, he has been to Peru, I think once or twice, and he's been working with the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and he's actually working right now on organizing another study in Peru, and I might be on the list to go down for that and do some experience with that. And that's for ayahuasca. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely, definitely. I mean, when you get into like getting into the topics of being outside or like being in water, like flotation tanks and stuff, it starts to come into what the nature energy is that can heal people. That ion healing energy from the water, from being in nature, getting that energy that's coming to you naturally, kind of re-earthing, kind of bringing yourself back to where you began, and getting away from all the stress and everything that's going to just make PTSD even worse. It's been great. It's very hopeful. I've had the opportunity, especially since moving to California, to meet so many veterans that have found hope in so many different ways. I mean, it's been amazing, and it's very hopeful, and it's a lot more uplifting to be a part of something like that as opposed to being like, no war, no war, no war, and constantly having like that depressing negative behavior around you, as opposed to seeing the hopefulness in what I've been doing, and being around people that are really just encouraging healing. I've had the opportunity to talk to people who run these centers. For instance, I just was talking to a woman the other day who runs a center where they do equestrian therapy on veterans, and basically she does it solely just because she cares. It's people that genuinely care about healing, and they're devoting their lives to healing these people that have been damaged by war. And it's been it rebuilds your faith in humanity, essentially. I believe yes. I would say about 90% of the people that are involved in this, you still see a very high rate of alcoholism. You see a really high rate of substance abuse, and not in the way that they're using it as a medicine. It's more of covering up those emotions, and refusing to confront what you've had to experience, or refusing to realize that there is another way. And I've also heard from people, from some veterans, that don't want to embrace their healing just yet, that they don't want to like get into any of that hippy dippy stuff or that new agey stuff, and they're like, I don't need to do yoga, and I don't need to breathe deep, like, and you get into that, and you really start to hear that, and you start to hear that the more and more you get into the groups that are very dedicated about like fighting the people that fight the war, and that's what they want, is for people to not be able to break free of that paradigm that has them stuck in there. And I have seen a lot of veterans in those specific groups kind of refusing to heal. And once you accept that you can heal, and that doesn't define you, that past doesn't define you, it's not gonna. The past is essentially the past. If you were in the military and you killed people, yes, you were a killer. Are you a killer now? No. And that's where people have to learn to accept, like, that is not me anymore. Now I can still do this anti-war thing, but I can still be this healed, more light being, essentially. I've been mostly focusing on sharing it right now. I have a few projects going on right now where I'm hoping to kind of compile the information and start sharing it with a lot more people, and essentially just reaching out to as many veterans as possible. And even just through simple things such as social media, or telling people, even just on like Facebook or something, hey, if you're like having problems like trying to figure out what yoga is best for you, or if you're trying to figure out like what you can do to kind of relax a little bit, hit me up and I'll talk to you. Or even so much as telling a veteran, like, if you ever need someone to talk to, you can call me. And just kind of being there for people. And it's like baby steps right now, but I'm working on some pretty big projects that once I am finished with them, it's gonna be great.
This week I stumbled into a story that detailed how flotation tanks, also known as sensory deprivation tanks, isolation tanks, can be useful and helpful towards veterans dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome.